Would love for This is going to be recorded. I would love for everybody to introduce themselves, tell a little bit about us, and then we can start a discussion. And of course, anybody who has questions and who's watching can um, post something, chat, or Facebook Live, and we'll make sure that we include you. We want everybody to have a voice in this great discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gina Kemper, and she can introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does.
Okay, I am Gina Hart Kemper, and I am a flutist, not a pianist. I'm loving all of this because I get to learn from the other side. Uh, I teach flute and other music classes at Mid American Nazarene University in Olathe, Kansas, and I also teach classes at Ford Scott Community College, and I lead the Kansas City Flute Choir, and I play in St. Joe Symphony, and I guess you name it, I do it. So there you have it. But yeah, I'm loving everything that's going on today and this week. I'm really looking forward to it. Loved Ilana's, and it was it Gabrielle, is that right? Thank you. I loved all that music. It was great. One of the pieces I noticed was like Catherine Grayson. I'm sort of a big fan of her in the old movies. And anyhow, so I just had to say that. But okay, I'm gonna pass it on to how about Anatolia? How about that?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Anatolia Ioannidis, collaborative pianist coach, living here now. um, Living in Dallas, Texas, from Athens, Greece. And my journey, musical journey, took me from the Athens Conservatory to Mozarteum in Austria, where I discovered my special niche for collaboration. That's where I started. Accompanying of all instruments, trumpet and tuba studios. And of course, I started specializing already in my undergrad because I was very interested in Mozarteum. Was giving us that opportunity with amazing collaborative pianists. I remember my first professor was Raymond Zeh, who was the piano coach and assistant conductor for the Mannheim Opera. My professors, both of them, the piano solo pedagogy professor and my chamber music professor, were both avid chamber musicians, Alphonse Kontarski and George Kern, an American, actually, to whom I owe a lot. And I live in Austria. I decided to take advantage of my second citizenship. A little known fact, I was born in the US, but I wasn't raised here. And I immigrated and did my master's and my DMA at USC, where, well, I was completely immersed in collaborative work, of course, at a very, very good school specializing in keyboard collaborative arts. I've been working professionally for over 20 years. Not teaching piano, of course, but as in my role as a collaborative pianist, I coach college students and I do collaborative piano skills when those classes are able to be offered. And I accompany a lot of instrumentalists. I am an avid chamber musician. I have my own trio, Triopolis, out of the University of North Texas with two esteemed colleagues, clarinetist Kimberly Caldwell-Bonneau and violinist Philip Solsofka. And I am a member of the International Keyboard Collaborative Art Society, and of course, a proud committee member of Corporate Collaborative Piano Institute. The challenges that we're going to be discussing today, discussion number one, I'm very, very curious to hear your experiences, and I will share mine, and I'm hoping that our audience, our auditors are also going to chip in and give us their experiences, leave some questions for us. We would like to continue this conversation anyway. Thank you. Should I pass it on to Ilana?
I'm Ilana Joyce Katie. I live in Massachusetts. I've been playing piano my whole life. My first dip into collaborative work was with my sister. She's older than me. She's a violinist. So we used to play together all the time. And then we ended up going to the same undergraduate school. And so even though she was a few years older than me, we did a lot of I accompanied a lot of her recitals and things like that. And I also had a lot of playing for choirs from a young age at my church and my school and things like that. So that's always been a big part of what I'm doing, except this last year with COVID. But I also play for ballet classes. I teach piano lessons. A few years ago, I graduated from Longy. And while I was there, I also, part of what you have to do as a solo pianist, you still have to take a certain number of credits of collaborating. And since I've graduated, most everything I've done is with my friends and collaborating. And it's just a really big passion of mine. So I'm so grateful to be here.
Great to have you, Grace.
Hi, everybody. I am Grace Odell. And so right now, what I do is I teach piano. I actually don't have very many collaborative activities going on at the moment. I do have a lot of experience mostly with accompanying singers, although I don't know, accompanying is probably the wrong word, collaborating with singers. And that's really one of my very favorite things to do. Not even probably beyond playing solo piano. I love playing with singers. And kind of like Ilana mentioned, I got into it first by playing with choirs. As a child, I was accompanying the children's choir at church. And so that's pretty much one of my, one of the ways that I learned about piano the most was through playing with other people, specifically singers. And so that led me to accompanying solo singers and going from there. And, you know, all this talk this week and being on this committee is making me want to get back into it. So, yeah, so that's kind of my story, having anything to do with collaboration.
Excellent. Jessica, I know you just popped in and I don't want to, we're just introducing ourselves and telling us a little bit about each other. So I'd love for you to have a chance.
Sure. Sorry, our other session ran right up to the minute. So yes, yeah, I'm Jessica Kebby. I started playing piano when I was around 9, so I always felt like I got a late start. My family moved a lot when I was young, and so I think I had about 7 piano teachers between the age of 9 and 15. And so when I finally settled, when our family finally settled and I started with that last teacher in high school, I knew that I really wanted to pursue piano as a potential career. And I was quite behind because we had moved a lot and always started over with every teacher that I was with. So I knew I was in a pretty big hole. And so she was very honest with me and just very tough and really got me into shape. And so then I did get into an undergrad program. I started at Mizzou, transferred to University of Kansas, where I finished my undergrad. And then I got my master's in music from Texas Christian University, and then my doctorate in piano performance from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I started teaching in high school underneath my teacher at the time. She had a mentorship program with her high school students. And then I started collaborating right away in undergrad because one of my scholarships was tied to playing for choirs and various instrumentalists and singers throughout the undergrad program. And I loved it. I will say I was thoroughly intimidated to play for a choir the first few times because I'd never even sung in a choir or played for a choir. I had zero experience with that. And that's a whole other skill set, I think, for collaborative pianists. But I loved it eventually. And then I just fell in love immediately playing with singers and string players. Then my master's assistantship was completely collaborative. So even though I was doing a piano performance degree, I played for a bunch of voice and string studios at TCU. And then after I finished that degree, I actually stayed on playing there for a few years, and then got a teaching position at Texas Wesleyan University, fell in love with collegiate teaching, decided I needed to get my doctorate. So I did that. But again, along the way, I was just collaborating all the time. So I am definitely, that is my heart. I love playing with other people. Solo is great, but it's not as rewarding for me as it is to play with others. So.
Great. Dr. Cohen Lee, introduce yourself, would you?
Yeah, hi. I can say I'm Dr. Cohen Lee because I recently finished my doctoral degree. Yeah, so now then my collaborative experience. Anyway, I graduated in Women's University in Korea, and at the time I didn't really have much experience like in there because we're like really focused like solo piano. Like as I trained it as a classical pianist, like since I was really young. And then I moved to US to my master's like at Indiana University, and it just like throw me there. Okay, you have to do like bunch of different things, like mandatorily do violinists and singers and cellists, and it was really hard, really hard for me. So I started to like, okay, this is a little different process for me at the time. Like I've learned so much, and so I started to like, okay, it's hard, but I need to get through it. So that was it. And then like I moved to Kansas City. I don't know, I had a great opportunity to join like a new music ensemble. So and then I started to like play with many different instrumentalists, many different like singers. So that's how I built on my career as a collaborative pianist. So I'm majority of the trombone studio at UMKC. I play for all of them. So that's like my really main thing is that surprisingly I married to the bass trombonist as well. So I guess that's like the path. Yeah, and so I guess that's like a one thing that actually led me to do this our Puerto Rico Collaborative Piano Institute. Our great friend like Flor, like she invited us, invited me like to join it, which is great. And yeah, I hope that I can do something more because I'm gonna do like some more women composers, like a collaborative stuff. So yeah.
Great. So I'll just start off a conversation, and for everybody who is auditing, and you may have more questions after this. We will have part two next week of the challenges. One of the things that I just want to put out there is I feel, and my opinion is that there's a place for everybody. I think collaborative piano has become very specialized. I've watched that since the inception of, so many of the programs, collaborative piano, which is great because, pianists have an opportunity to do something that then can extend for the rest of their lives. But it has become very specialized. And in that, I think that it has become a challenge for a lot of pianists to find opportunities. I know in Omaha, a lot of the gigs are hired. They hire professionals to do the gigs. 20 years ago, it was students who were interested and wanted to learn and could have opportunities to do those things. So the challenge for me at this stage is to try to advocate and really mentor. So not just mentor students, but mentor the community to give pianists a chance to learn how to play with choirs, to give pianists a chance to, do they like playing musical theater? There's so much opportunity, and I do feel that we still have to advocate as a community of collaborative pianists that we're resilient, and if we want to do something, we can figure out how to do it, and having connections for us throughout the country, it's one of the things that it's really nice to have this institute and the International Keyboard Collaborative Art Society, so it unites us. So because we're always working and we're always running. But having these sources now gives us kind of a, momentum. So one of the questions I will ask, and then the maybe the thought after that, and I'd love to make sure that that's equal time for everybody, because it's so important to have that, is talk about something that you think today is a challenge for collaborative pianists that you have experienced, and in and of itself experienced it, but how have you been able to make changes to advocate so that that challenge is becoming less of a challenge in your community or on the national, international scene. Ilana, do you mind me starting with you, since you're so kind to be here after your presentation?
Sure. Um, yeah, I think something that you mentioned is true, that there are a lot of gigs, but there aren't a lot of gigs at the same time. And I know, as somebody who's recently graduated, even trying to get back into my grad school to accompany there has been a challenge, because they no longer are allowing students to work with non-hired collaborative pianists. So you have to be on the staff to play there. And so, once those positions are filled up, there's not much out there to do. So, one way I try to get around that is just, planning my own stuff for now until I can get in the door somewhere, to have a bigger job like that. But, just playing with my friends that I know, and then friends of friends, in kind of concerts that we just plan ourselves.
Yeah, creating your own destiny. I think that's the way of the world right now. And then putting yourself out there, right? And saying, I'm available. If anybody needs, this is what I can do. I think we need to continue to support each other that way, because it really is a challenge. Ko-woon, what kind of challenges have you faced?
Well, same as Elena already mentioned it, like, yeah, recent graduate, and because, like school so far provided me, oh, I need a pianist. Can you perform like in a month or 3 weeks? I needed that. Sure, okay. We've been through that. So, of course, and when you're in school, absolutely, you just need to say yes, okay. And then, like, I just recently graduated, and then, okay, where I can find my spot to perform, like all kind of stuff. So yeah, same. I do that. Like like reach out my friends. Hey, I know that you're interested in this one. Like, would you like to do this one? Okay, let's do this one. So like, I'm trying to like make own stuff, even though I have a college job as an adjunct, but this is, I mean, something we have to do like multiple stuff time, I think.
It made me think of when you were just talking about that, the scene now in national conferences. So whether it's the Tuba Euphonium National Conference, which I have been to, and it's outrageously difficult, but it's great, or like the Flute National Conference, or the Double Reed, like that seems to be a niche for pianists who can get in. And then once you get in, or even in the Mississippi, they have the Women's Festival, and I was just corresponding with someone and they're looking for pianists to go in and help in those festivals. To me, I wonder if one of the resources for pianists who haven't gotten to that point yet is you just start sending your things out to whoever's in charge of the conference, or if you can pair up with an instrumentalist and go and then start advocating about, because you have projects, that might be, it just made me think, Cohen, when you were talking about that, because your trombone experience, they're always looking for pianists that can play that literature. Grace, how about you? What kind of challenges?
Well, a few things are coming to mind, and it's related to what everyone's talking about. And I mentioned when I introduced myself that I haven't been doing a lot of collaborative work. And part of it is kind of what Kawun was saying. I had a lot of opportunities when I was in school. And now that I'm out of school, I've learned a lot about respecting my own time and my own worth in a way that I didn't learn when I was in school. And so what that has led to is opportunities coming up and me realizing that I have to say no, because they're asking for a lot of time and not much given in return, in terms of financial compensation. And it hurts because there are these opportunities that come up that look really fun or that look really interesting. But as a person who's self-employed right now, it's not something that I can just do for fun, right? There needs to be something coming back for all of the time that I'm giving into it. And related to that, it seems to be difficult for me. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, and I'd appreciate any advice that anyone has. It seems to be difficult to find truly collaborative opportunities. A lot of times it's like, oh, we're doing a musical and we need somebody that has a keyboard. And then you get there and all of the singers are like, oh, but I actually need it in this key when you've been practicing it in another key, and just no respect given. And that's another reason. Basically, anytime anybody asks me to accompany a musical, I'm like, sorry, I can't do that. Because I've done it enough times that I've realized that the pianists are often taken for granted, and what they can do is taken for granted. And I'm not the kind of person that can just play something in a different key on the day of. Some people can, but that's not me. And I've learned to respect that about myself and accept it. So for me, on my end, it's mostly challenges. So I haven't quite found the solution to these yet.
Yeah, and you bring up a really great theme. And I think that has morphed. I really do. When I went to Brevard, Alana, did you go to Brevard? Did I read that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, Brevard was my that was the first festival that I had gone to after my freshman year in college, and it was just heaven because everybody wanted to work together, and that's where I learned opera, and we were all there. It's I feel the value for collaborative piano work there's balance, there's pros and cons, but it has diminished a lot. Everybody's replaceable. You can find another pianist. That doesn't mean that they're going to be maybe as well suited, but it doesn't matter. They don't have to pay everybody the same. That value, I think, that we have to educate. It's somewhat grace in a way of you sticking to your boundaries and saying, no, I'm really not going to do that. I think pianists today have to deal with that all the time. And it wasn't that way 10 or 20 years ago. Anatolia's trying to get back on. She got kicked off, and I'm sure she has a lot to say about that. But I think one of the things that you touched on was finding true collaborators. And, I could list maybe on two hands of all the work that I have done, true collaborators, but I've never given up on that, because for me, it's about equality, actually, right? And the equality for me as a female pianist is, I might have done gigs to survive, lots of gigs just to survive, but I kept reaching for, I'm not giving up. I'm going to find that person like Alana and Gabby. I'm gonna find that person that we can do those things, because I think that's where some of the you store your passion, and then you find other places and other people. The value is that now we have more presence, and so we can advocate and create more equality and equity, but we fight for it. Like, I fight in Omaha all the time about pay, and in Nebraska, I'm like, we have to have, like, here, there's statistics everywhere. This is what you're charging, and this is what the expectation is, and that means this. And it's constant pushback, but that might be one of the only ways that we find more value in that. Anatolia, I was just commenting on what Grace was saying, and so many about the value has somewhat diminished. We're all replaceable, and finding true collaborative partners. And places that we can work that have, right, the ability to see that. I'm sure you've had some experiences with that too.
Absolutely. I'm having a little trouble with my connection. I'm sorry. It's coming in and out. Challenges are multifaceted. On that specific subject of pay and of which is more than the monetary, right? It's the appreciation and understanding of the skill that you're offering and how that is respected and considered. It is a very big, whether you're a woman or a man, it is, it's a fact in our field. But as a female collaborative pianist, I've had to deal with a lot of pre-assumptions and sort of the tendency to put you in a box, even when you're hired for a specific academic position. Somehow, all of a sudden, there will be somebody, a chair or a director or a fellow, a colleague, that will have an idea about what you are supposed to be doing or not to be doing, although you're faculty at that institution, and what your rights are, what your responsibilities are, and what the requirements of this position that can be very fluid without without us even knowing about it necessarily. And that is a situation that is still going on. I feel that we've come a long way because now we have some advocacy, and I think that we can also work more on that, and we owe that to ourselves and to the next generation. And also the fact that as a collaborative pianist, there is not just the freelancing that we know or the academic, very sparse academic positions that there are around, but we live in an age and a time that everything is being re-evaluated, and we have a unique opportunity to curve a new path, or at least a more enriched path for us and more future for the next generation that we, as Stacy very well, but we're trying to mentor, and we're trying to make them love what they're doing and continue, because it is a wonderful field. We're complaining about circumstances, but not about the essence of what we do, making music together with other people partnering, whether instrumentalists or vocalists, and being so multifaceted and having such a huge toolbox. Then that's what people don't understand. Being a collaborative pianist doesn't mean fingers, or even kind of putting something together and playing with somebody. It's the skill that it takes. It's something that, I'm sorry to say, most of solo pianists who only do solo, I'm not saying I'm a solo pianist too when I can, but, people that do not do real collaborative work do not have those skills. They may have a talent, they might be very virtuosic and wonderful solo performers, but it doesn't mean they are great chamber musicians, collaborators, accompanists, as we call it. That's another disputed term there. Definitely, to do what we do, we need to understand each and every instrument that we're partnering with and the idiosyncrasy of that instrument in terms of sound, timbre, dynamics, articulation, expressive means. And the piano, the constant in that collaboration, needs to be the one to create all those other colors and understand. With voice, another game altogether. Understanding and knowing diction, other languages, relating to the poetry, working with the singer to bring out that poetry, because we accompany the singer because the word comes first, not the singer necessarily, but the word, the poetry comes first, and for the singer as well. And it's a very intimate, very valuable, very beautiful and refined collaboration, but people don't necessarily know. So advocating for that, or understanding that when you are in a place with an instrumental or vocal partner, especially a younger person, let's say as a faculty member, as a collaborative pianist as a staff pianist, sitting in a room, you're not playing fingers, you're coaching that person, and you're helping them learn, understand, and develop the musical skill in collaboration with their applied instructor. But still, the work that you do is something that the applied instructor, I'm sorry to say, cannot do. Doesn't have the skill or nor the time. Quite honestly, even there's a couple of cases of people that have the skill. So, and that is what I found to be my challenge and my frustration, and how also collaborative skills, which are the skills that every pianist needs to have, at least the basic ones, the fundamental ones, regardless of whether they will be collaborating or they will be more teaching or playing more solo, or it doesn't matter. Those collaborative skills in academia need to be there for everybody. For everybody that majors in music. And every collaborative pianist needs to have string methods, woodwind methods, so that we also, but it needs, but people, it's still, I always think that as much as we love academia, and I do, it always comes after. It reacts, it doesn't act. We act, and academia adopts. And this is a huge challenge. And I've had a lot of unpleasant discussions, conversations, and also, how do you call it, like sort of reactions, negative reactions to my advocating for something like that. But I think it's worth it, and especially in this world we live in now, with the new technology, with the new skills that we need to have in technology, in recording, in playing in non-conventional performance venues, and creating a future for classical music, in the new repertoire that we do need to embrace, the neglected repertoire, and put it in the canon of music. And I think because of the personality of the collaborative pianist, we are called to do that, because we are the ones who partner and develop relationships with all the other musicians in our field.
Yeah, great point, Anatolia. So I have a couple questions. I'm curious about what you think, and some of the people who are watching. It's twofold. For those of you who have recently graduated from piano programs, do you feel that your education gave you what you needed to be out in the real world, professional, collaborative world? That's the first part. Like, do you feel like you were launched into and prepared to do that kind of work? And then the second part is runs along the lines of representation. Do you feel that all the pianists in your programs, or in your community, who are trying to do collaborative work, like, do you feel like there's equal representation for those who may not have gone to school or majored in music, but have those strengths and have had wonderful mentors and teachers that they could do similar types of work that you're trying to do? So I know that's a lot, but I'm really curious.
Okay, I'm going to say something really quick that kind of relates to that, even though I'm not obviously a recent graduate, and I don't even play the piano. My flute teacher in graduate school at the University of Michigan happened to be married to a fabulous pianist, and they were a duo, and they toured all over the United States and Europe for a long time together. They studied in Paris together, they studied at Eastman, and when we got new accompanists for this flute studio, my teacher knew, as I know now from him and from my other teacher too, that especially the flute repertoire, it is not easy, and you have to be. I mean, I try very hard to be kind to our accompanist at MNU, and Jess has jumped in a couple of times when she's known the piece, and I know it's difficult, and I'm like, wow, if you already know it, this saves this poor lady from doing bazillion much more hours of work where she's going to play the piece once, and I try and give her things that I'm going to just repeat with every kid. But my teacher taught whoever was in our studio, and often he would place that person with me so they could just follow me because I was easy to follow, and they would pair us together. He would pair us together and teach this young lady, and he was a flutist, and I think we need more of that from from my side of the fence here as an instrumentalist. You got to be understand that everybody comes to the table with different strengths and weaknesses, and no matter what, we have to collaborate all the time. And so anyhow, there's my 2 cents. Hopefully it helps.
Yeah, I totally agree. I learned from singers. That's where my collaborative experience started, with their teachers that were willing. And there are very few singers, teachers, and instrumental teachers who are willing to do that anymore. I speak about that a lot. I think that's really changed that. But okay, so back to those questions. Do you feel like you were prepared? Do you feel that representation for pianists who maybe, you know, can't go to these schools and can't study, like, is there still the ability to have the tools that they need to collaborate in whatever sense that they want to? What do you think, Cohen?
Well, I don't know, like my experience, from my experience, like personally, I was really lucky to have really like great mentors throughout my, my education. Like one of the thing at like IU, like they have, I mean, now they have a collaborative piano department, that was very recent, like developed. But when I was there, there's no collaborative department, piano department there. So all like solo piano, like the idea is like, oh, you're a pianist, not just a solo pianist, not just a collaborative pianist, you're a pianist. So you should know how to do both. That's what we're training you. So that was like a really good experience that now I can learn, like not just play by myself, like myself, like in the practice room, just do that. Like, okay, now how I communicated with this instrumentalist, like singers, and also like with like second language, like that was like a whole other different like challenge for me. Because, okay, what they're talking about frog, what they're talking, all this string instrumental, like those language, I've never heard of it, like in English. Like, what's going on? So that was like a really good experience with that. So I, kind of prepared to like step out of my comfort zone. Like, okay, now I can work with other people. So then like came to UMKC, and like we just kind of recently like changed a lot of piano department. Like now we have really like great collaborative piano faculties. Like she's doing a lot of stuff there. Not just the performance. She like now teaches all this collaborative like literature, all this kind of classes. Unfortunately, I didn't take any classes that, but I know there's like a really good changing the path. So I think one of that is like, if you have a really good mentor, like that's like a really important thing, like for some like a young pianist or who recent graduates still can touch, your formal teachers and mentors. So I feel like that's kind of important thing.
Before somebody joins in, I also I'm going to read Rachel Zimmerman. One of the panelists jumped in, and she said she didn't go to school for a collaborative degree, but it wasn't the focus. But she felt like she learned through pure experience, which is common, which is really great to have that experience. She said string and woodwind methods would have been great. Alexander, the mapping with the Alexander technique, and of course, some of the things that we're advocating for now with the wellness is really great. I agree with her. She talked about, Rachel mentioned that it would have been nice to have more structure about how to play other styles, right? Like chord charts and pop music, and maybe when some others talk about their experiences and if they felt prepared. I would love to know if you had those experiences as well. Chord charts, pop music, like stylistic things that you would be expected when you took a gig, to know how to do. So maybe we can add some of that into the conversation. Ilana, you want to jump in?
Sure. So I think to answer your first question, for me, my undergrad teacher, I had talked a lot with her about maybe doing a master's in collaborative piano. And at that time, I don't know, it was just like, it was kind of like a negative stigma to her. She did not encourage it. More like, if you're a good solo pianist or you do that track, you don't need, to do collaborative. Like it'll just kind of happen somehow magically. And so in that way, I didn't have, I didn't feel prepared to necessarily to go about that. But since I had done a lot of accompanying on my own for my sister and other of the string department, some vocal stuff, not a lot of vocal in college and my master's, but um, again, I think I learned more through experience. I had some teachers who were helpful, but not, not that many who would really sit there and practice with my part instead of just making sure I was together with the person. So that was kind of my experience with that. And in my undergrad, just to talk a little bit about the chord chart and stuff like that, it was a religious college. So I worked at one of the campus churches playing for praise music and that type of stuff. And so all of that is chord charts. And it was kind of just like jumping in the deep end, trying to figure it out. But I think a lot of listening helps. I don't know that anyone can necessarily teach you 100% how to play those styles, but I think it's about a lot about just listening and figuring it out that way.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I think that, there's a certain quality to pianists who want to be collaboratives, right? We want to be supportive and we want to be flexible and we learn a lot on our own. I do think that it's really important for those of us who are collaborative pianists to look for the other pianists who might be interested and to give them kind of a safe place, right, of encouragement, because there still is that mentality. It's shocking, but there is still that mentality that if you're a solo pianist, you should just be a solo pianist. I'm not quite sure how we're still in that framework of you should get a solo piano degree. And by all means, if that's really what you want to do, but I think it takes resilience, and I think that's a piece of it, Alana, that you spoke about with pianists. You really want it, you're going to find the way to do it, and hopefully you have those mentors and you have a place where, maybe you call someone and say, I don't know how to do this. What do you do? I mean, with social media and just even networking, call somebody and say, what did you do in this situation? Can you help me out? And now there's so many more resources for it, which is super helpful because that wasn't the way it always was. Do you feel like there's representation? Because now when I look back at my career, it was kind of like a dog eat dog. You just went and you just did and you just wanted to. But I don't know that there's fair representation. And by fair representation, I mean, people aren't given the chances, and there are young pianists who might not have had the same type of experience that I have. They might be better players, but it's kind of, Anatolia touched on it. It's like, and in for me as a woman, I can speak to, there are biases, right? And there's biases for all sorts of people, but are we really, as collaborative pianists, looking now, because we're so consumed with our own work and what we have to do, but are we really looking to see how we can help fair representation? I will say that it was a privilege for me to take piano lessons. That's the first thing, I think. And then it was a privilege to be educated in it. But I learned very early on that the most talented people are not always the ones that have the degrees. And they're not the ones who are, they're not going to boast about themselves. They're not going to say how wonderful they are. They're just so inherently musically talented. And I'm curious about how, as collaboratives, we can continue to not talk about it, but be action oriented about how do we represent it at the professional level, and even young students, right, who might not have as much support. Like, where's the representation? Where do you all see that right now?
Stacy, when you talk about representation, are you referring to those young musicians that may not have the formal education being included in the roster,
Yeah.
so to speak? I feel that programs like ours and many others that are sprouting right now could be great help, as long as they continue and they structure and they keep growing and they keep insisting, because there is a lot of very hidden talent. Not everybody, regardless of the demographic too, sometimes, like financially or where they are, and also the racial inequalities that we have to admit our society faces every day. Though those are factors that have a detrimental, like a dramatic effect on anybody that has a talent and would like to do something, and they actually can play by route things that I cannot even imagine, kind of playing myself. But they were never given this opportunity to get that formal education. But I think I'm gonna a little bit quote, semi-quote, a colleague of mine, Casey Roberts from the University of Illinois in Urbana, that she's very, very adamant about, include in that kind of inclusion, and the more the pop idioms and the charts and praise music or gospel in, because that we know nothing about, but we are not allowing the ones that know something about it to actually educate us. Somehow, academic, classical sort of training has become that kind of a fortress of, oh, we know everything and we are the higher, whatever, level of musicianship, and nothing else really matters as much. I actually grew up with that. I grew up because I was always extremely multicultural in my approach of things. And also, I have to admit, I loved other idioms other than classical very early on. And I like to play them and sing them and fake them and whatever I could. From jazz to pop, ballads, whatever, blues, I was introduced to very little things, but a lot of Latin music, I kind of felt it always, like I felt, oh, I belong kind of there. But that was just an instinct. And when I would go to my formal conservatoire educators, right, who were amazing musicians, and like indicating that I have listened to this, or I was dancing to a merengue, let's say, right, or a folk Greek song, for example, they would look down on that. Like it's a lesser style, a lesser form of art, which of course we all know cannot be it's the furthest from the truth. After all classical musicians drew from their folk art. And that's what they actually composed. Beethoven composed Ländlers, and he brought them to a different, level. Maybe, yeah, of course, he was a genius, but he drew from his heritage. He did not come up with that special German music all of a sudden. It's nothing. And I feel also there is still that bias against people that don't come from that background, the European background. There is a huge bias, and that if that doesn't change, and it doesn't change in academia too, in the way they approach music in general, then I don't think that we will be able to draw in these talents and give them the rightful place and take advantage of the fact that they are the ones, maybe, or a part of the future, that they don't take away positions from anybody. Expanding means we're creating more for a future. Because I've heard that too. I mean, there's antagonism, and antagonism brings closure. My sense is that we need to change fundamentally the way that we think about formal music education in general, or music education as it is. Degrees are wonderful. I'm very proud of mine and my doctorate because of the work that I gave to it. but it is not what makes you a good artist, a good anything, a good citizen, a wonderful professional, an educated human being. Not really.
If I could jump in, I think one of the things, I think what we see in the world of classical music now is the result of only giving a very specific demographic a voice. So I think the attitudes even are derived from that, this condescension towards any other kinds of music. And my personal opinion on that is that because that originated because there was this idea that, Western was better, but also that male was better. Not, I don't even know if that had to be said. That was just so entrenched in the mindset that that just was better. So folk music or dance forms or female, interpretations of these things were inherently lesser. So I think a lot of what we see now in academia is a result of those mindsets. And so simply, I think ways to combat that, simply speaking up, always talking about these composers, always bringing them to light, even though, and then I'm sure we have all faced this, that when we do talk about, when we have a concert, of women music, that there's always going to be those people that are like, okay, good job representing them, or whatever. That attitude is just so inherent in so much of that academic culture and in the fine arts culture, whether that's attendees or people who are choosing what they are going to program for orchestral programs and that kind of thing. It's just there. So I think the biggest thing that we can do is, as women or as minorities in music, is to just not be quiet, just keep doing these programs, keep making them a part of like just normal programming, not speak about them as if they are something so different, of course, bringing attention to it because it has been neglected, but not because the attention needs to be given to that because it exists, not because of who wrote it, just like we do for so many of these other composers, Beethoven, who undeniably genius, that there's no one's arguing about that part of it. It's just that he's not the only genius in the room. So
I think that also brings me back to what we started with when we were discussing challenges. Oh, Grace, sorry, I saw your hand.
Sorry, I just had something to add to that, but you can go ahead. Oh, okay. Just to kind of expand on what Anatolia and Jessica were talking about, there seems to be, from my observation in like Western classical music, especially academia, this obsession with hierarchy. And so this applies to the types of music. What is the good type of music? What is a not good type of music? But it also applies to what we're talking about with a degree. So like we're talking about someone who might not have a degree, might be as good or better at their job as someone with a degree. I've gotten jobs before just by them knowing I had a degree. I didn't have to play for them. It was a teaching job. It wasn't a collaborative job. I didn't have to play for them. I didn't teach in front of them or anything. They go, oh, you have a master's in music, you get the job. I could have been really bad at it, but they just hired me. And like, I was happy to get the job, but it was incredibly frustrating because it wasn't based on how good I was at what I did. And so, and I think it's all linked. So that obsession with, oh, do you have this piece of paper, is linked to, oh, Beethoven's a god, right? And so I think that it's kind of what Anatolia was saying. It needs to be a fundamental restructuring of how we're thinking about everything. And so another one of my pet peeves is concerts that are like focusing on raising up other marginalized composers to the level of Beethoven, or those kinds of people, like saying, oh, all of these women composers are just as good as Beethoven. But I don't think that that's helpful. I mean, to a certain extent, it's helpful. It's better than not hearing that music at all. But I think that it still is encouraging this idea of hierarchy, where, oh, we're just raising all these other people up to this high level, instead of saying, we just got to get rid of this whole idea that some things are like inherently genius and other things aren't, because that's just upholding really white supremacy. So that's what I had to say.
Yeah, I'm so passionate about, speaking to diversity, equity, equality, inclusion for everybody. And I think conversations like this where we advocate and really say those things, I completely agree. The hierarchy in academia and the structure, It needs to change. There is just a need for it on so many different levels, which brings us close to the end of this part one, and I will bring it back to mentorship and advocating. I know in the place that I'm at now, teaching students and then and knowing more of, I always reach out to all the collaborative pianists. And if I know that there are people who are interested in playing for something, I'm going to put their names out there before I'm going to put my name out there, and really try to support those experiences for collaborators in an equal way, reaching out and letting students know it's possible, and being there to help support them so that they're prepared and they're not in a difficult situation that some conductor or some director is going to say, oh, it was, really trying to give strength to people, and I think that's part of our challenge, but I think it also is part of our responsibility, for others. That's where the representation comes now, is really, like Grace, same thing, so you have a degree in music, and I always say, so what? What does that mean? Like, what, know what you do well and do it well. And if you want to risk doing something, great. I'm a huge risk taker, but there are other people out there that I feel that we can really, promote and speak to these things, and that's part of why I really invested in the Puerto Rico Collaborative Institute. You can see from the roster, you can see from the people who are working, you can see for the advocacy and the guest artists and the presenters, and it was like Ilana and Gabby just gave this great presentation and concert about women. It wasn't, oh, we're just gonna showcase these because we have an opportunity, but they really have a passion for doing that, and they told you why and what that means. And those are the kinds of things that I want to continue to support and promote, and individuals who are in that process too. So closing note real quick, thank you all for being here. We will have another round two. If any of you have something specific that you want to bring to that conversation, please email me and let me know. I want that to be guided by maybe some of the other things that could be helpful in conversing about. Jessica, I'll give you the last word because I know you're the grand master right now, and we're moving into the subsequent. I know, and Jessica is just she is the grand poobah. So thank you for being here, Jessica. You get to take this out.
Oh, well, thank you for organizing it. Stacy was the one that definitely took this panel, and just I jumped in her lap and said, please make something of this. So as you all know, she reached out to everybody. So I appreciate that so much, Stacy. I will email you this, but I would love to see a discussion continue about, I think two of the ways that we can raise equality in our field as collaborative pianists is advocating for equal pay with our instrumentalists / other musicians that we're playing with, because I for sure have experienced being hired for professional gigs and got a much lesser pay rate than the person I played with. And then also, second thing is advocating that our names be included in the advertising. It seems so simple, and yet once again, so often it's just the one other person, or it's everybody but the pianist advertised, which speaks to a whole level of respect and inequalities that we need to continue to combat. So those are my 2 cents for what we can maybe carry on the discussion with. But so thank you all for joining us, and thank you for the questions. Emily had to leave us early, but she had a really great point in the comments about setting boundaries. So that could possibly also be another discussion point for next time. We have one more event today. That's at 6:30 Central. We will be premiering, actually, Stacy and her colleague Christine Beard's flute concert. And so we encourage you all to attend that, please. And that will be on our Facebook page. We will have a Zoom link for those of you who registered. We will open up the Zoom link after the concert for a time of question and answer, or just a nice discussion with Christina and Stacy after that concert. So we encourage you to join it, and please share any events on your social media pages as you see fit. Thank you.